Hey guys, I'm Joe Pollock, and I'm going to be walking us through Chapter 9 of our textbook, New Media Continuing Questions and New Roles. A lot of this chapter is dealing with the advancement of technology. There's changed delivery methods, with YouTube being a new form of TV programming now. Um, it gives people the ability to more efficiently organize and to split off into groups of people and to find your respective cliques. Um, and now the first informer role, it can be filled by both citizens and professional journalists because of our access to post things directly to social media. Um, and the line for who provides the information and who receives the information is more blurred due to these technological advances. Citizen journalism, however, does lack verification, which is what separates citizen journalism and professional journalism, because professional journalists verify information and they provide context to the information as well. Public forums have also become more of a place where, or since the beginning of public forums and the internet, people can meet up at random and have different conversations and start different dialogues on various topics. Um, the concept of utilitarianism was also brought back up in this chapter, and pretty much just with the internet, it's become a tool where we can better educate ourselves and gather more information to make us more educated in different areas. And because of that, the greatest good for the greatest number of people um, has a bigger impact in our democratic implications. So I focused on case 9F, sending the wrong message about doing the right thing. So in this case study, Black Entertainment Television (BET) introduced a short cartoon video entitled "Read a Book" on July 20th, 2007. The video encouraged life skills, mainly read a book, but it also encouraged other things like having good hygiene, responsible parenting, and wise use of money. Uh, you This was used in a way where it was kind of a public service announcement, but you can see why there can be conflict in calling it that as we go on here. The song was sung by a cartoon rapper, D-Mite, who bears a resemblance to Little John, and the style of the song itself um, uh, is in the style of crunk music, which is a subgenre of hip hop. The lyrics are very repetitive and filled with obscenities, including the N word. Uh, the video also contains potentially offensive images, such as women shaking their butts with the word book stamped across their pants, or the image of a book being loaded as a cartridge in an automatic weapon. The origin of the song, it was created by an educator who works with young people in Washington, D.C., Bomani D-Mite Arma. He composed this song, "Read a Book," because crunk music was popular at the time and wanted kids to be able to relate to the message that he was sending out. Arma circulated the song on MySpace for a while, but eventually BET's president of entertainment, Reginald Hudlin, discovered the song and contacted Arma about making the song into a video. The video generated more than 1 million hits and 4,000 comments on YouTube, and the reaction towards the video was very mixed. Some comments, like the one below, praised it, saying the video is satirically representing how rap has degenerated into nothing more than violent and sexual messages when it originally was meant to convey important messages to black culture. So while the video shows both violent and sexual images, it paradoxically is trying to send a positive message of how to lead a better life. Um, but on the other hand, you had more critical comments. One by Jesse Jackson, an American civil rights activist, said, "Read a Book heaps scorn on positive values and unintentionally celebrates ignorance. The narrator is obviously illiterate, unkept, and disrespectful. So who's going to take his advice seriously? As for Arma, his intentions behind it were all good. A quote from him: "The message behind the song was secondary to the idea of parodying it, this style of music." And he also said how one of his friends told him for it to be considered a crunk song, the author must be repetitive, aggressive, and curse as often as possible. Greg Ford, an American parent, explained why, even though it may seem bad, it's not as bad. By explaining the satire behind it, he said the thing with satire is that it speaks to a point, but you still realize it's satire. People who are not in our community are not going to see this as satire. So Arma hopes that the song gives out two messages: one, that crunk music is ridiculous, and that kids should read books. Students have also thanked Arma for validating that getting an education is cool, and parents have told him that the song got their kids to read. So Arma's intentions behind writing the song was to initially just make fun of the music, but also to add a message behind it that that getting an education and being educated is cooler than all these other things that are being depicted throughout the video. So some issues here. Was it ethical for Arma to write this song? Was it ethical for him to use negative stereotypes in a satirical way? Is satire itself ethical in that circumstance? And then you can look at some issues with whether or not BET was in the right, because they had this song turn into a video. And not only that, they aired it. Specifically, does it change whether or not it's ethical if we look at that? There is an understanding that kids who are younger than their target audience watch this, and they know that. The other question is for parents who allow their children to watch it: is it ethical for them to let their kids watch something that depicts negative stereotypes of their own race? So we look at all of these, and we look at what Aristotle, Kant, and Mill would have to say, and how they contrast with each other. So we know that Aristotle, that he focuses on the character themselves, and he focuses on his golden mean, meaning that virtue lies between two extremes. So as long as you're acting between the two extremes, then it's okay. And while satire itself can seem very extreme one way or the other, Arma himself and how he was acting when writing it, I believe was acting between the two extremes, as well as BET. So I think Aristotle would think that both of them acted ethically. Whereas with Kant, he focuses on his the action itself and the intentions behind the action. And when you look at what Arma wanted to do, he uses satire, but he uses the satire because he wants to point out how ridiculous things that people think are cool. He wants to point out how things that teenagers and young people think are cool, how they're really ridiculous and don't really hold much value. BET wanted to do the same thing, but just take it a step further by making a video and broadcasting it. Whereas satire itself, if it's being used to make fun of something negative, then it's something that would be ethical. And then finally, Mill, he looks at the outcome of it. So um, the greater good is is the majority of people who are being affected by this being affected in a positive manner. So Arma, um, he was acting in a way he wanted to help the youth of America. And as you can tell from the last couple of slides, parents called saying, "Hey, like, look, you got my kids to read a book," and then kids were like, "Hey, thank you for validating that me getting an education is cool." So it helped a lot of people in that sense, and same with BET for broadcasting it. However, with satire itself, I think the use of satire caused, if you look past the population of young African Americans, it caused a lot of conflict um, in saying whether or not this was an okay thing for BET to broadcast and for Arma to create a lot of people, including uh, reporters for CNN and such, who just didn't understand the satire behind it. Um, so because of the conflict it created with that, I would have to say that Mill would look at satire as an unethical thing to use. Um, as for myself, how do I view it? I look once again with Kant, and I look at the intentions of Arma and BET behind this, and it was to have a positive impact that could reach the greatest number of young people in America. So I think that the way Arma acted and BET acted was ethical when using their satire. And then my test question, blank and the societal benefits of common knowledge were also at the core of the cultural literacy movement in the last century. And the answer to that is A, shared experience.